All right, 9.6 is going to finish out our trig chapter in ALEKS. So no, chapter 9 in ALEKS. So if I had a right triangle that had 3, 4, and 5, and I called this A and I called this B, what is the sine of B? Sine of B would be, it's not pig snort. Nice try. What is the sine of B? What two sides does sine use? Because remember? Opposite and hypotenuse. So we use the mnemonic SOHCAHTOA. So sine is the O side divided by the H side. So with reference to angle B, what is O? 4. And H is 5. Okay? So the sine of angle B is 4/5. All right? And then we could do the same thing with other angles. So we also had problems that looked like this. We would have, let's say, a 10 and an X and a, well, let's do this angle, a 35-degree angle. What trig ratio do I need to pick to solve for X? Which one is going to use this side and this side? Tangent. Or sorry, cosine. Cosine uses A and H. So we write the cosine of 35 is equal to X over 10. And how do we solve for X? We just multiply by 10. So X is just 10 cosine of 35, and I plug that in my calculator to figure out what it is. Let's change it just a little bit. Let's use that, well, let's just draw a new triangle. Let's say this is 40 degrees, and this is X, and this is 9. Which ratio do I need to pick to solve for X? This is O, and this is A, so I need to choose tangent. The tangent of 40 is 9/X. How do I solve this type? You switch places with the tangent of 40 and X. So X is 9 over the tangent of 40. If I pull up my calculator, X is 9 divided by the tangent of 40, which gives me 10.72. Okay, so if you know the angle, then you use sine, cosine, and tangent. So the sine of theta is O over H. Well, if you look at this problem on ALEKS, it's a little bit different. Oh. Right? It says, find the angle if A is 12 and H is 23. Which trig ratio do I need to pick? Which one uses A and H? So if we write down SOHCAHTOA, we need cosine. So I'm going to write the cosine of X is equal to 12 over 23. But that doesn't tell me how big the angle is. So in these problems, this is an angle, and this is a ratio made up of side lengths. You take one side and you divide the other side. So if you know what the angle is, then the calculator will tell you what the ratio is equal to. But here, we know the ratio is 12 over 23. We want the angle. So we're going to do what is called the inverse. So I'm going to switch places with these. And when we do that, we are computing the opposite of the cosine. And the opposite of the cosine is called the arc cosine. So the arc cosine will turn A over H into an angle. So this one says cosine of an angle is equal to a ratio made up of side lengths. But the arc cosine will take the ratio of side lengths and tell you how big the angle is. And that's what the inverse was always called, was the arc cosine. But when we invented calculators, cosine is really nice. It fits on a button in the calculator. Arc cosine is really long, so we got lazy. Instead of using arc cosine, we just use this button, cosine -1. And that just means cosine inverse. So if you look at your calculator, above the cosine is the cosine -1 button. So the cosine -1, the inverse cosine, of 12 over 23 is going to give me 58.55. If I take the cosine of 58.55010, then I get 12 over 23. So if you know the angle, you use the sine, the cosine, and tangent buttons. If you don't know the angle, then you use the inverse buttons. Can you guys remember that? Okay, let's do a couple of these. Calculator. All right. Which trig ratio do I need to pick here? Well, I know that the sine of x is 12 over 14. So I want to do the inverse. The sine inverse of 12 over 14 will tell me how big angle x is. So the sine inverse of 12/14 gives me 59 degrees. So, 10, yeah. So it wants us to round to the nearest tenth, so it'll be 59.0. Good there? Do you want to see more of these? Yeah? Okay. So this one is going to be inverse sine. I know the O and the H sides. So inverse sine of 4/6 is 41.8. Okay, this one would be tangent. Inverse tangent of 27 over 14 gives me 62.6. Okay. All right, let's do the next problem. So here we have a triangle and we know one angle and one side, and it tells us find everything else. Well, because it's a right triangle, this angle is really easy to find. If one base angle is 47, then the other base angle has to be how big? So these angles always add up to 90. So if one is 47, then the other has to be 43. Okay? So if I want to find C, then I could do the cosine. The cosine of 47 is equal to 19 over C, not X, C. Okay, how do I solve that? Switch places with those. So 19 divided by the cosine of 47 is 27.9. So this is 27.9. Now, here's something you have to be careful about. when I solve for b, should I do the tangent, or drop my stylus, or the sine? Which one is a better idea? Technically, it doesn't matter, but why is tangent a better idea? Yeah, this here is an approximation. It has been rounded. So if you use that number to solve for b, you might be really, really close to the answer that Alex wants, but you might be off by 1 decimal point, and it won't let you do it. So try to use this number because it is an exact number. The other one is an approximation. We cut off some of the information, and that could cause problems if you try to use it. So the tangent of 47 is 19 over b. Switch places, and we do 19 divided by the tangent of 47. So we get 17.7. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm going to draw my own triangle. What if I had this? Is that enough information to fill out the entire triangle? Yeah, it is. How can we find A? How would you find A? Well, let's wait a minute. So if I want angle A, what ratio do I need to pick? Cosine. And we're looking for the angle, which means I'm actually going to use cosine inverse. The cosine inverse of 8 over 10 is equal to angle A. So we type in cosine inverse of 8/10, and I get 36 point, that would be 36.9. So A is 36.9 degrees. Okay, which means angle B is simply 53.1 degrees. Now, how do we find little a? Well, you could do the tangent, or you could do the sine using angle A, or you could do cosine using angle B, or tangent using angle B, or you could do the Pythagorean theorem. Once you have two sides of the triangle, you have a bunch of possibilities to find the third one. So I'm just going to do a squared plus 8 squared equals 10 squared. So that's a squared plus 64 equals 100. Subtract 64, and a squared is equal to 36. So a is 6. We good there? All right, last problem. So, angle of depression. The angle of depression means if you are looking perfectly horizontal and you tilt down, how far of a rotation is that tilt? Some of these problems will have angle of elevation, which is the opposite. You point flat and then you tilt up. So in this problem, you are in a lighthouse and you are, what unit is this in? You are 164 feet above the ocean, and you are 1,188 feet from the boat. What angle would you have to tilt to see where the boat touches the water. So which trig ratio is going to use O and A? Tangent. And we want to find the angle, so we do tangent inverse of 164 over 1188. So inverse tangent of 164 divided by 1188. Oh, I missed. I'm dropping things all over the place today. And that gives me, that angle is 7.9 degrees. Okay. All right, that's it. Get to work.